All right. So, again, continuing in this series on conversations with Jesus, Matthew 15 is where you want to be as Jesus speaks with the woman from Syrophoenicia. Uh, the time frame of this, it's in what we have referred to at times as the retirement ministry. It's not that Jesus retired, but he withdrew for a while from the crowds that were in Galilee, and he sought to spend some alone time with the disciples. And so, to that end, they actually left Galilee during that time. Not the whole time, but at portions of that. They left Galilee and they journeyed into the Gentile regions. And that's where Syrophoenicia is one of those Gentile regions. It's up along the coast near Tyre and Sidon. And Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 tells us he departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon, which is northwest of Galilee. In Old Testament times, this is a region that would have predominantly been Philistine, and the Phoenicians were there at this point. And so there he met a woman of Canaan. Verse 22 tells us, identified as a Greek in the parallel text in Mark, and there's going to be an interaction between the two of these. Now, when Jesus got there into the region, he entered into a house there. We're not told the details of the house, but the intent was that he would have rest and have privacy, have alone time with the disciples. But as the case was, wherever Jesus went, word spread that he was there. And when this woman heard that he was there, she came, she fell at his feet, and she had a request for him to help her daughter. In verse 22, she says to him, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed." Now, first of all, let's notice that these are Gentiles. She and her daughter are Gentiles. The demon possession thing that was going on was not just among the Jewish people. It was going among the Gentiles as well. Now, having said that, as we study in the scriptures and take a look at the time frame of the scriptures, go back into the Old Testament, you're not going to see demon possession taking place. It's not until we come to the years where, right around when the Christ is there, that we see this huge rise in activity of this sort. And so, the devil's pulled out all the stops. He's sending out these demons to wreak havoc among the people, not just the Jewish people, but the Gentiles as well. And so Jesus comes across this woman who has a demon-possessed daughter. Now, her statement is not only respectful, but it's a rather astute statement for a Gentile to be making. "Have mercy on me, O Lord," there's the respectful part of it, "Son of David." She acknowledges that he is the son of David. Now, I don't think she's into genealogies. I don't think she's done some digging to find out, everybody she meets, she wants to know what their ancestry is like. That's not it at all. She has heard that one has come in their midst who is able to perform these miracles, and there has been words scattered here and there that this might be the Messiah. And in fact, remember the Magi who came at his birth. That was their understanding. This is he who was born King of the Jews. This wasn't just something that only the Jews understood. There were various times when some Gentiles would come along who had this kind of understanding about who he was, and she is one of them. When she says, "Son of David," that is not just simply a statement about his ancestry. That is a statement about him being the Messiah. This is a moniker that belonged to the Christ. And so she acknowledges he is Messiah. He is the Christ. He is the Son of David. Matthew says in verse 22, she cried out to him. In Mark chapter 7, verse 26, it indicates that she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And so she asked multiple times, but at first, Matthew tells us that he answered her not a word. Verse 23. He didn't respond. Barnes says of this was done to test her faith, and that there might be exhibited to the apostles an example of the effect of persevering supplication. And that very well might be the case here, that he knows the hearts of people. And he knows the faith that she has, and that she's going to persevere. She's going to continue to ask. And we're going to see that she remains undeterred. A lot of people would have turned away, given what she's going to go through here. But it's not just this initial non-response. There's also an apparent rejection along the way as well. But she is undeterred. She is going to continue. Now, sadly, if part of Jesus' intent here was for his apostles to see the effect of persevering supplication, they failed. It's not that she failed. It's not that Jesus failed. The apostles failed. If that was part of the intent, was that they get to see what perseverance looks like, they would have none of it. Look at verse 23. The apostles are getting annoyed with her, and they say to Jesus, "Send her away, for she cries out after us." Lord, this is just getting annoying. Maybe you could just send her away. I don't know if their reason is because she's a Gentile, if it's because Jesus seemingly has no intent of helping her, and so why keep putting up with this? Was it the arrogance and sense of self-importance that would show up again in Matthew chapter 19? Remember, some who came with their children, wanted to bring their children to Jesus. They forbade them to bring the children to Jesus. Now, he doesn't have time for that kind of thing, right? We're not told the reason why they said send her away, but they're certainly not getting the lesson if they are to learn about perseverance here. They're just simply annoyed. Finally, Jesus responds to her cries. But his response is not what she wanted to hear. Verse 24, he says, "I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He identified for her the scope of his ministry. Here's who I'm supposed to be dealing with, and it's not the Gentiles. He came to minister to the Jewish people, and in particular, those who had lost their way, to bring them back. Now, the gospel eventually is going to go to everybody. And the prophets foretold that the gospel was going to go to Jew and Gentile alike. But while he was here, his mission was to reach the people of Israel first. And so I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Notice that's not no. He didn't say no, but it sure is an obstacle in the way. You're not part of my mission right now. He's not saying I don't have concern. He's not saying that there's not something for you in the things that Christ offers. But at this point, she's not part of the mission. Remember, he had gone there for respite. It was not part of his ministry. He had gone there in order to take a break with the apostles, part of that retirement ministry we had talked about. Well, look at verse 25. It says, "Then she came and worshipped him, saying, 'Lord, help me.'" How many people would have just turned around and walked away? That's not what she did. She came and she worshipped him. What a great example of being persistent. She's undeterred by this statement. She prostrates herself before him, she worships him, and she continues to plead with him. When she first came, Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. The message hasn't changed. Lord, I still need your help. Well, I'm only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I'm still here, and I still need your help. And so she continues to plead for her daughter, that he might heal her daughter. Well, he responded again, and again, it likely isn't what she wanted to hear. He said in verse 26, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." Whew. How many of us are still there, right? Yeah, he's at first he's not listened to her, not responded to her, and then when he does respond to her, he says, "No, I didn't come to minister to you." And then at this point, he uses the word dogs to talk about her and those that are around her. This conversation is not going the way that she had envisioned it. The Lord just referred to her and her daughter as dogs. Now, before you get upset with Jesus for saying that, we need to understand his intent here is not to be offensive at all. The Jews would commonly refer to the Gentiles as dogs, and when they did so, their aim was to be offensive. The idea was that a dog is an unclean animal, and so the Gentiles are unclean animals. That's not what Jesus is doing here. He's not trying to offend her. We have seen Jesus interact with Gentiles at other times in the Gospels, and he doesn't seek to offend them. He doesn't use this kind of terminology typically about them. We talked in our series about the woman at the well at Sychar, the Samaritan woman. There's the people of Decapolis that he went and spoke 3 days to. The lepers of Samaria that came to him and he healed them. The centurion who came on behalf of his servant. And in none of those cases did Jesus ever purposefully seek to offend somebody. He is often very forthright in how he speaks. He is very honest and very fair in how he speaks, but he does not seek to offend. And so we ought to wonder at this reference to dogs here, and it should cause us to do a little bit of digging. What he does here, this is actually a short parable that he gives. And his reference to the dogs in this parable has nothing to do with them being unclean. In the New Testament, every negative mention of dogs uses the Greek word koum. It would be translated as dog or could be translated as a hound. So texts like Matthew 7 and verse 6 don't give what is holy to the dogs. Luke 16 verse 21, remember the dogs came and licked Lazarus' sores. They weren't coming because they wanted to make him better for his sake. They were coming to prepare for a meal. Philippians chapter 3 and verse 2, beware of dogs, beware of evil workers. 2 Peter 2 and verse 22, dogs return to their own vomit. Revelation 22 verse 15, the dogs are outside with the sorcerers and the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, and the liars. All of those are that Greek word koum, which is the general word for dogs. In this text, Jesus didn't use that word. He used a different word. He used the Greek word kunarion on this occasion, which would rightly be translated a puppy. That's why the New King James says little dogs. If we're looking at this in the King James just simply says dogs. It doesn't make a difference between coon and the Greek word kunarion. No distinction made there. It's just dogs. The New King James does say little dogs. In the Fourfold Gospel Commentary, McGarvey writes this. He uses the diminutive for the word dog, thus indicating a tame pet and suggesting rather the dependence and subordinate position than the uncleanness of the dog. By so doing, he gave the woman an argumentative handle which she was not slow to grasp. McGarvey is absolutely correct here. Jesus is not insulting her or the Gentile people en masse by calling them unclean dogs, but he's simply pointing out to her that the primary concern is the children of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And so the parable here is I'm preparing a meal. And when I prepare my meal, you prepare the meal and you put it on the table for the children. You don't prepare lunch and then stick it on the floor for the dogs. That's not what you do. And so he's talking about his work, and his work is to deal with the children, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, not to deal with the little dogs, not to deal with the pet of the household. If we don't grasp the differentiation in these two Greek words, I think we're likely to miss the nuanced explanation that Jesus gave her here, that it's a parable, and that he's actually talking about one that is subject to his care. It's just one who is not in the same position as the children at this point. And so again, McGarvey is spot on when he says that Jesus gave her an argumentative handle with this statement. It is not good to take the children's bread and to throw it to the little dogs, but notice what she latched onto immediately. Yes, Lord, but yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. I am confident that Jesus was waiting for her to say that. That he had given this parable, this illustration, and what she has shown in faith so far, he understood she's going to latch onto that. And she's going to bring that up, the crumbs. And, an exceptional statement of faith. And again, I think that Jesus anticipated her saying this. And she agrees, you're right. You don't give the children's meal to the dogs. But it is permissible for the dogs to eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And in doing so, understand that the dogs have done no harm to the children, nor to their portion, because what's fallen to the floor is no longer the children's. You're not going to have your children eat off the floor. But the dogs can eat off the floor. And so she's not asking for him to focus on her and her region and her daughter in the same way that he does for Galilee and for Judea. She understands that, yes, his mission is to go to them, but here he is in their midst. And so she's satisfied to receive just a few crumbs from the table. And she's confident that that would be sufficient for her daughter's need. And so, Lord, let us have the crumbs. Just drop some crumbs, and it will satisfy. Verse 28. This is what she wanted to hear. O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. And then over in Mark chapter 7 at verse 29, it says, for this saying, go your way, the demon has gone out of your daughter. He commends this excellent faith that she has. He's glad that she responded the way that she did. And so he will grant her request. He's excited about her persistence. Again, the disciples, they wanted her to go away a long time ago. He's excited about her persistence, about this keen understanding. First of all, she comes and she calls him the Son of David. Not many of the Jews were calling him that. There were several among them who were in doubt about who he was. She's got no doubt at all. And that's why she persisted. That's why she would not leave. There have been a lot of great things written on this text and this woman's faith. I'm going to read two of them. The first quote comes from Johnson, who is the writer of the People's New Testament commentary. He says, we can see how greatness of faith is manifested. 1, she came to Christ under difficulties. 2, she persevered when her prayer seemed to be denied. 3, she still pleaded when obstacles were presented. 4, she waited at the feet of the Lord until he had mercy. Such faith always prevails. And then again, McGarvey in the Fourfold Gospel, he says, thus by its ending, this little incident illustrates the doctrine that men should pray and not faint. Luke chapter 18. The woman's experience has been often repeated by other parents who have prayed for children, which, if not demon-possessed, was certainly swayed by diabolical influences. The woman's faith is shown in many ways. 1, she persisted when he was silent. 2, she reasoned when he spoke. 3, she regarded this miracle, though a priceless gift to her, as a mere crumb from the table of his abundant power. Lord, just give me a crumb. That's all she desired. And so, go your way. Your daughter is healed. Great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. Well, let me ask you, do we have the kind of faith this woman had? How many of us would have remained there and continued to petition him through this whole process? Jesus, over in Luke chapter 18, he gives a parable about another woman. Remember the widow who came to the unjust judge. And she was seeking for this judge to give a ruling in her case against her adversary, and he wouldn't, because he was unjust. And so what she did is she kept coming back over and over and over and over again, and eventually he gave a ruling in the case just to get rid of her. When Jesus drew that parable to a close, this is what he said. Shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? The Lord wants us to be consistent and persistent in our faith. He wants our faith to be unwavering. He wants us to be resolute. I'm going to stand firm, stand fast. I'm not going to move. And this Syrophoenician woman that we've talked about is an excellent example of that. She would not move. Her perseverance in petitioning the Lord, she just simply would not stop, despite what came her way. She didn't give up at the beginning when the Lord did not answer. How often have we prayed to God for something and there hasn't been an answer? Well, that's not him saying no. That's just simply he hadn't answered yet. And so continue to pray. But too often, folks will give up at that point. The Lord didn't answer my prayer. Well, maybe the answer is wait. And so we need to continue to pray. She didn't give up when the disciples urged the Lord to send her away. Can you imagine that? That happens. Sometimes we have brethren who are discouraging, who will tell us to give up on this or that. Hopefully they're not telling us to give up on the faith, but who discourage us in one way or another. The disciples who should have been there and learning the lesson that was in front of them, they were a discouragement. But she didn't give up when that happened. She didn't give up when Jesus explained the limited scope of his ministry. You're actually outside of the scope of what I'm supposed to be doing. I've come to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and you're not one of them. You're a lost sheep, but not of the house of Israel. She didn't give up at that. She continued to persist. Lord, help me. She acknowledged who he was, and she needed his help. She didn't give up when the Lord compared her situation to the family pet who does not get fed lunch at the table. Instead, she acknowledged, yeah, I am that family pet. Let me have the crumbs. She cried out to him. She kept asking him. She worshiped him. She pleaded for his help. She used sound reasoning, and she displayed great faith. There's a reason her situation is recorded for us in 2 of the Gospels. The Lord wants us to learn from her. May the quality of our faith in Jesus and of his power to save be equal to that which we see in this Syrophoenician woman, this Gentile who just simply needed his help. You and I are Gentiles who need the help of our Lord and Savior. And so may we learn from her to be strong in faith, to persevere, to just not give up. If we can help you in your walk of faith today, we want to do so. If we can be an encouragement in some way, let us know how it is that we can build each other up and grow our faith so that we have the kind of faith that we see in this woman and in so many other great examples in Scripture. If there are things that are discouraging us, then let's help each other to overcome those discouragements. And so maybe we need to be praying for certain things. Maybe we need to be studying on certain topics. Whatever it is we can do to help each other, let's be sure that we're doing that. And so if we can help you in some way today, let us know as we stand together and we sing.